Have you ever gotten an ICK from a potential partner or love interest that instantly killed your attraction to them? Story number 1. First date, I was filling gas and she started going through my phone. I saw her go through it and continued to fill gas as she read my text messages. I'm a fairly open person with little to hide, but I do value trust and honestly, soon as the pump clicked, she put it back in a hurry. I skipped the dinner plans and dropped her home. If I can't even trust you with my phone, I can't trust you with my future. I didn't address it immediately. She didn't know I was driving towards her house until we got super close, at which point we had maybe 2 minutes left together. In a calm and am disappointed in you tone, I told her I caught her in the act and this blatant breach of privacy was a deal breaker for me. She's too old to be acting like an insecure teenager. She was 26 and that she should address this behavior before pursuing serious relationships. She knew she was in the wrong. She stayed quiet till we got back and left the car without a word. Still no apology though. Story number 2. I went on a date with a seemingly nice guy in my early 20s. It went well, so after dinner we cuddled in the back seat of his car in a quiet country area listening to music. He gently played with my hand and fingers and gave me a little massage, so relaxing. When he got to my wrist, he looked at it, flipped it around a few times, and says in a lustful voice, "It would be so easy for me to break this little thing right now." Story number 3. She started to set up the relationship in a way that made me her emotional punching bag to where I was to blame for any bad feelings she had. Nothing I could do or say in those moments could ever help the situation because that wasn't my purpose in her life. I was the distraction from her own issues. She refused to acknowledge her extreme moods weren't because of her or her past, but it was because I said something the wrong way or laid on the clean sheets with a sweaty body. I came about when I realized, at 40 years old, that this has always been the pattern in my relationships with women, and it has everything to do with how my mom treated me. She had her own massive trauma from being horribly abused as a child, but used that as a shield to use me as her emotional and physical punching bag when she was in a bad mood. "You're not being abused, I was abused" was a line I heard constantly as she beat me on a regular basis. Once I saw that for what it was, it disgusted me, but it also changed how I handle relationships now, and now I'm happily married for 2 years to a wonderful woman who never does that to me. Story number 4. I met a woman on Tinder a few years back and we hit it off really well. About a week after we had met, she deleted me and blocked me on all forms of social media with little to no explanation. I was texting her on my iPhone, and after she sent one last text, it went from a message blue to regular text green. After that, I messaged her again a few hours later and heard nothing. I checked my Snapchat, Facebook, and Instagram and couldn't find her anywhere. I panicked because I thought I had genuinely connected with her, but after a day or two I calmed down and thought, if this is some kind of a test, I'm out. Fuck this high school bullshit. So I fired up Bumble and Tinder again and matched with someone on Bumble who showed genuine interest in me and started an awesome conversation. The next morning, I got a text from the original woman and she literally said, "I see you're back on Tinder. I made a fake account to see if you would get back on, and sure enough, there you are." I laughed to myself. Because I knew immediately I had dodged a massive bullet, I responded essentially saying, "Well, you blocked me on all social media and my number. How was I supposed to know you'd reach out?" She literally said, "It was supposed to be a test of your loyalty, and you failed. I can never be with someone who would start talking to other women immediately after something so trivial." I responded saying, "All right, sounds good, have a good one," then blocked her myself. Oh. And the woman I began talking to on Bumble immediately after the first one blocked me. We will be celebrating 3 years of marriage and 5 years total together this upcoming September. I went from a batshit crazy woman to the most wonderful person I've ever met in my life. Talk about an upgrade. Story number 5. Traveled 6 hours to hook up with an old high school friend. She was a super cool goth chick growing up and super hot as well. We were a little flirty back then. But never worked things out. She messaged me one day to catch up and it turned sexual pretty much immediately. We were planning on me spending Friday evening through Sunday afternoon together in a weekend of debauchery. Once I arrived, I could not contact her to be buzzed into the apartment building, so I had to sit and wait until another tenant let me in, got to her apartment and knocked on the door, a piece of plywood with a drawer handle screwed on. She eventually opens the door after I pounded for a while. She is still super hot, but her posture was non-existent, like hunched over to where she was over a foot shorter than her full height as she stood. We hugged and kissed, and she immediately drops to her knees and gives me the best head of my life. I mentally forgive the inconveniences so far, as well as the cloud of thick cigarette smoke that filled the room. I still think about that BJ all the time, and it has been over a decade since. She then asks me to run an errand with her, so I agreed. We get into her car, and it takes several minutes for her to even plug in her iPod because she keeps nodding off. I, for some reason, let her drive to her friend's house where she borrows several oxycodone pills. They grind up and snort a couple pills before we head back to her place. I had no idea what this errand would be until they started counting out pills and tallying up who owes how many to who in a notebook. I was just sitting there trying not to let too much WTF show on my face. I drove us back to her place. She was still nodding off, more off than on at this point for the rest of the evening. It takes several minutes to exchange a couple sentences with her at this point. Once we get back, she offers me some mushrooms that she grows in a storage tote. I accept, even though I am super skeeved at this point. I felt a little buzz, but didn't trip. I think it was sheer force of will keeping me sober. She started tripping balls and crawled around the room for the next few hours with a flashlight, looking for something like Golem searching for the ring. She was having some sort of mental break throughout the whole evening, talking about how her ex was listening in on us and knew what we were doing and all sorts of wild shit. She really wanted to get laid, but I just didn't have a condom heavy-duty enough for me to risk fucking a potential cryptid. While she was inspecting the perimeter of her room, I pretended to go to sleep and excused my way out of there at the crack of dawn on Saturday. Great blowjob. Story number 6. She wanted me to only call her the name of her high school bully, who was guy that she said she couldn't stand repeatedly. Too much to unpack. This happened like 5 years ago. I was 23 at the time and didn't really know much about dating, except for what I learned in high school, and was just coming to accept my sexuality. I admit, when things started to get intense, I should have ended it, but I got out. This was supposed to be a little look how crazy this relationship was thing. I cried my tears, and I am doing so much better for myself.